Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was saved by the 9 tails and awakened Shinigami powers, attracting forbidden love. Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto rushed at Zabuza with a speed he shouldn't have been able to move at, carrying that huge sword. Naruto smashed down in a vicious two-handed blow on Zabuza's sword. He jumped back and leveled his sword at Zabuza. Zabuza's eyes grew wide as flames flickered over the length of the blade. Naruto held the sword in a reverse grip, the edge of the sword touching the ground. Naruto raced towards Zabuza, the sword leaving a trail of fire as it scraped along the ground. Zabuza brought his sword up in a horizontal block to block the diagonal slash that was coming. Naruto saw this and instead swung his sword low over the ground, aiming for Zabuza's knees. Zabuza jumped over the slash, barely dodging the fire that emanated from the sword. Naruto completed his spin, using the momentum from the attack to come down in a crushing vertical slash. Zabuza managed to bring his sword up to block the blow, but the sheer force of the blow depressed the ground into a crater about a foot deep. Kakashi watched in amazement as Naruto fought on par with a class Nukenin. Zabuza pushed the sword back and used the break in Naruto's guard to aim a horizontal slash at his stomach. Naruto knocked the blade down with a slash from his sword and pinned it under his foot. Zabuza gave a jerk that flung Naruto off the blade and up into the air. Naruto flipped in midair and righted himself, coming down with his sword over his head. Zabuza sidestepped and Naruto's sword slammed into the spot where he had been standing. Naruto swung his sword sideways and almost got Zabuza in the side. What Zabuza forgot was the trail of flames emanating from the sword. The flames seared past him, singing his skin. Zabuza stopped any possible burn with a quick water jutsu. Naruto flipped over him and aimed a slash at the back of Zabuza's head. Zabuza lashed out with a kick and caught Naruto in the stomach. Naruto flew towards a tree but he flipped and pushed his legs against the tree, using it as a springboard to come back with an even faster attack. As Naruto flew towards Zabuza he saw Zabuza bring up his sword in a wide block, using the full width of the sword to his advent guy. Naruto frowned as he saw that he wouldn't be able to break through that guard, but perhaps he didn't have to. Naruto did a front flip so that he was coming at Zabuza's feet first. As soon as he felt his feet connect with Zabuza's sword he flexed his knees, absorbing most of the momentum. He pushed off the sword and landed a backflip. Unfortunately for Zabuza was that all that momentum went to him, which was exactly what Naruto was hoping for. The force of Naruto connecting with his sword knocked Zabuza off balance, breaking his guard for an instant. Naruto knew that he wouldn't be able to attack with a sword swing that fast, so he dashed forward and punched Zabuza in the stomach, winding him. Naruto followed up with a roundhouse kick to Zabuza's face, sending Zabuza bouncing across the water like a skipping stone. Zabuza forced chakra out of his body and righted himself, standing on the water. He flashed through a lot of hand seals and on the 44th he jumped into the air and called out the name of his jutsu. Suiryuden no Jutsu. A large dragon made of water rose from the lake under Zabuza and rushed towards Naruto. Naruto focused Ryutsu into his hand and ran his hand over the blade, forcing it into the runes, making them glow blood red. He swung his sword and called out, Jigoku Okibi Ken, Furia. Hellfire Sword. Flare. A large blade of fire burst from his sword. Steam erupted as fire and water fought each other. Naruto swung his sword, the pull of the wind blowing away the fog. Zabuza jumped onto the lake and made multi-hand signs. As he stopped he called out, Daibakufu no Jutsu. The water around Zabuza swirled and shot forward at an impossible speed. Everyone who was watched opened their eyes wide. There was no way that Naruto could dodge this. Naruto closed his eyes and after a moment snapped them back open. He channeled more Ryutsu into his sword and held it high over his head in a plunging position as the water flew towards him. As the water came upon him he plunged his sword into the ground yelling, Jigoku Okibi Ken, Katsu. Hellfire's sword, explode. There was a giant explosion of flame, the water that had been coming at him hissed and turned into steam. Zabuza appeared behind Naruto and swung his sword, aiming to cut him in half. Naruto spun and smashed into Zabuza's blade with the hilt of his sword, knocking the blow off course. Zabuza used the momentum and twisted his sword, bringing it down towards Naruto's head. Naruto brought up his sword and blocked the blow, the two massive blades fighting with each other for dominance. Naruto ran his sword down the length of Zabuza's blade. Zabuza's eyes watched the progress of the blade, because once it got far enough down he would be able to strike. As Naruto neared the end of the blade he spun to the right, his blade leaving Zabuza's. Zabuza was still putting pressure on his blade and it slammed into the ground. Naruto lashed out with the flat of his blade, smashing Zabuza in the ribs and sending him skidding across the ground. As Zabuza tried to stand he groaned as he collapsed to the ground. Naruto had broken 5 of his ribs with that blow. He was finished. Naruto walked slowly towards Zabuza, his blade consuming more and more of his Ryutsu until the blade was covered in flames. Naruto slowly raised his sword. The flames on his sword leapt hungrily into the air, becoming larger with each second. As Naruto was about to strike the final blow, two Senbon needle impaled Zabuza in the throat and he fell to the ground, lifeless. There was a swirl of leaves and a boy of about 13 appeared over Zabuza's corpse. The boy had on a Hunter Nin mask that completely obscured his face. The boy threw a Senbon and the clone holding Kakashi dispersed. "Thank you for fighting him, I have been tailing his for quite some time." The boy hoisted Zabuza over his shoulder and made to disappear when Naruto looked straight at him. Aren't Hunter Nins supposed to destroy the body on the spot, and bring back something as proof that they killed their target? The boy shrugged and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. "Damn it, he got away," cursed Naruto, slamming his sword into the ground. The Ryutsu faded from his system and his clothes returned to normal. Kakashi stood, swaying slowly. Naruto took a step forward and suddenly felt pain pulse through his body. He fell slowly towards the ground thinking, "Kuso, I must have overdone it." He hit the ground with a thud and Hinata rushed forward to check on him. Thankfully he was just exhausted from his fight with Zabuza, his heart and pulse rates were normal. Kakashi took a step forward and he too fell to the ground. "I must have been without oxygen for too long." Hinata checked on Kakashi as well and found that he would be fine in a couple of days. Sasuke couldn't move. How could Naruto have gotten so much power, to be able to take on an A-rank Nukenin and win? Just who is he? At Tazuna's house, Naruto awoke slowly, squinting his eyes against the bright sunlight. He slowly lifted himself out of the bed, not knowing where he was. He saw his saw leaning against the wall, a katana once more. He belted it on and walked out to the kitchen. He saw many people seated at a table. Kakashi, Hinata, Sasuke, Tazuna, and 2 other people he didn't know. A child and a woman with long, black hair. Kakashi waved at him and Hinata gave him a good morning. His throat felt as dry as sandpaper. He managed to ask, where are we?" Tazuna smiled and pointed to himself, "Why, you're at my house, boy." Kakashi stood up and Naruto noticed that he was on crutches. "Kakashi-sensei, what happened to you?" Kakashi just rubbed the back and smiled. "It seems that my body was deprived of oxygen for too long." Naruto nodded. Kakashi turned and faced everyone. "All right, first we'll eat breakfast and then we'll train." The attack that Hunter Nin did on Zabuza more than likely simply put him in a near-death state instead of killing him. Naruto turned before anyone could ask questions. Senbon, being primarily used in acupuncture, have a very low kill rate. Only a direct hit to a vital organ would have any hope of killing someone. Everyone nodded and sat down to eat. The boy sitting at the other end of the table glared at Naruto. Naruto ignored him and kept eating. Finally the boy stood from the table and stomped up the stairs. Naruto raised an eyebrow but did nothing. A clearing in the forest. Kakashi stood in front of the three of them. Finally he spoke. Today you will be learning to climb trees. Everyone nodded, waiting for the other part of the instructions. You will need to focus chakra to the soles of your feet to keep from falling off the trees. Too much and the tree will repel you, too little and you won't stick to the tree at all. Do it like this. He turned and focused chakra to the soles of his feet walking up the tree, crutches and all. Naruto looked at Kakashi as he hung upside down from a tree branch. Kakashi pulled 3 kunai from the pocket of his pants and threw them to the 3 on the ground. Naruto caught his, spinning it by the loop on the handle. Hinata and Sasuke simply leaned down and pulled their kunai out of the ground. Team 7 focused chakra to the soles of their feet and dashed towards the tree. Naruto made it about 10 steps up the tree before he slipped and fell towards the ground. He hit the ground with his hands and pushed off, doing a kip up and landing on his feet. Sasuke only made it around 5 steps before the tree cracked and he was propelled backwards. They sat on the ground until they heard a giggle from above them. They looked up to see Hinata sitting on a tree branch about 30 feet up, the kunai stabbed into the trunk of the tree. It makes sense, with the Juken she would have to have perfect chakra control. Kakashi chuckled to himself. Naruto looked up at Hinata, not with jealousy but with pure admiration. Hinata blushed under his stare and jumped down to the ground. Naruto smiled at her. Good job Hinata, do you think you could help me out a bit? Hinata nodded. With his massive chakra stores of course it would be difficult for him. As she helped him she asked him a question that made him stiffen. Naruto-kun, what happened back there, with Zabuza I mean? Naruto turned to her and shook his head. I can't tell you right now, but I will. Hinata knew that answer was going to be the best she would get and continued teaching him. He didn't seem to understand that the Byakugan could see through everything, including his henge. But she'd tell him that later. After a few pointers Naruto tried tree walking again, this time making it more than twice the amount he had last time. He marked the spot where he slipped, already high above Sasuke. Sasuke knew he needed help but was far too proud to ask for it. After many hours of training they trudged back towards the house, Naruto especially tired since he had used 1000 Kage Bunshin to help him in his training. As they sat down at the table Naruto noticed the boy glaring at him again. Finally he couldn't take it anymore. You got a problem with me or something kid? The kid slammed back his chair. Standing up, he shouted, why do you try so hard? There's no possible way you can beat Gato, he'll just kill you all. You come to this town, you don't know anything about what's going on here. You always act so carefree and happy, you have no idea what suffering is, what my life has been like. The last sentence struck a nerve. He jumped up quickly, shoving his chair back so violently that it cracked against the wall. He laughed without mirth, a cold dark laugh that seemed to echo throughout the eyes slitted. I don't know what suffering is. My entire life I've been beaten on my birthday, had my apartment burned down at least 6 times now. Every day until I was 6 I was beaten within an inch of my life. I never had any parents, I've lived alone my entire life, and up until we became Team 7, I'd never had a single friend. Don, whine to me about how unfair your life is, you don't understand how good you've got it. He shouted at the boy. Inari shouted back, yeah right, you're probably just lying so everyone will feel sorry for you. Naruto's eyes flashed and he tore off his shirt, revealing hundreds of crisscrossing scars. One particularly large scar ran from his left shoulder blade all the way down to his right hip. Do you think I'm lying now? I have scars all over the rest of my body as well. He pointed to the scar on his back. This scar was given to me by an shinobi wielding a katana, one of my own villagers. He pulled his shirt back on and stormed out of the house, sitting on the pier. Everyone stared in shock, still able to picture Naruto standing there, with the scars all over his body. Naruto-kun, all those scars. Hinata left the house and sat on the pier with Naruto. Naruto-kun, she wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug, intent on never letting him go. She cried on his shoulder, so sorry for all the things that had happened to him. He stiffened at her hug, until he heard he crying. She crying, for me. He wrapped his arms around her in a hug, and for the first time in 8 years, cried. Naruto stood in front of the Kyuubi's cage, water lapping at his ankles. Kyuubi stood in front of him in his human form. He looked at Naruto and smirked. Well kid, you're very good with swordplay, but the fact remains that you know almost no ninjutsu. Naruto hung his head and Kyuubi continued, that's not to say that I couldn't teach you some. Naruto's head shot up and his eyes widened. How will you do that? I mean you don't even have hands half the time. Kyuubi growled and an explosion of red chakra blew Naruto backwards. Do you forget who you're talking to? I'm the one that created the Sharingan, aren't I? What do you think I do in here all day? This place is boring as shit. Kyuubi looked up and a gleam appeared in his eyes. He flashed through multiple seals and landed on his final one. Naruto screamed in pain as seals appeared across his body. He rolled on the ground, slamming his head into the ground. Naruto finally stopped screaming and stood again. What the hell did you do to me? He shouted. Kyuubi smirked and snapped his fingers. Naruto's seals glowed red and he slammed into the ground. Naruto stood, finding it much harder. Naruto took a deep breath and said, let's try this again. What the hell did you do to me? Kyuubi answered him this time. I covered your body in gravity seals, they'll only show here though, so your friends won't see anything strange. The increased gravity's pull on your body, making your body weight twice as much as it normally does. I can increase gravity's pull with these seals, making them an excellent way to train because they train all of your body at once. Kyuubi waved a hand vaguely, towards all the water around them. But first you've got to do something about this. You mean change it, how? First, clear your mind, let it become a blank slate. Naruto did as he was told and the walls and floor became pure white, completely blank. Next, think of what you want this room to look like. Naruto focused his thoughts and a landscape slowly changed, becoming far larger than the room should contain. When Naruto opened his eyes he gasped at what he had created. In front of him was a huge, behind him was a large plain, and to the left of him was a mountain range, dotted with trees and even a waterfall. But to the right of him was Kyuubi. Kyuubi stared at his hands and walked around laughing. The cage had disappeared. Kyuubi turned to Naruto, a smile clear on his face. Thank you, he whispered, just loud enough for Naruto to hear. Naruto, I'm going to teach you chakra control, jutsu, kenjutsu, the works. The only problem is that this is only for mental training. It gives you the experience of training, but with no actual muscle build-up, meaning you'll only be able to train and practice here. It's a lot like your Kage Bunshin. However, even though we won't be able to build muscle here, we can build muscle memory, making it so that you do things almost automatically. Naruto nodded, his eyes shining at the possibilities of training in a place like this. Naruto, I want you to create 100 Kage Bunshins and have them start to tree walk before we move on to everything else. That way you'll be training in one thing even as we train in another. Naruto put his hands in a ram seal and shouted, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 100 clones flickered into existence in front of Naruto. With a wave of his hand Naruto sent them to practice tree walking. Kyuubi nodded and started talking again. First, we'll work on taijutsu. Keep in mind that you will be much slower with those gravity seals, this only to get you accustomed to the weight. This will only be light sparring. You can't die here, but any injuries you receive here will still hurt, even if they don't affect your body on the outside. Both Naruto and Kyuubi slipped into fighting stances, Naruto slightly off balance from the added weight. Naruto dashed forward, much slower than before. He threw a punch at Kyuubi, but it was sluggish and Kyuubi easily dodged it, slamming Naruto in the chest with an uppercut. Naruto forced himself to stand, struggling against the added weight of the gravity seals. He threw a flurry of punches at Kyuubi, all his punches either being blocked or dodged. Naruto didn't notice, but his body was slowly becoming accustomed to the weight of the gravity seals, his punches becoming slowly faster. Kyuubi caught both of Naruto's fists and smirked. His knee flew upwards and caught the boy in the stomach. Kyuubi let go of Naruto's hands and he doubled over, coughing. When he had regained his breath, he stood upright, slipping into a fighting position once again. Naruto charged Kyuubi and threw a punch. Seeing that Kyuubi would easily block the punch, he dropped low and tried to cut Kyuubi's legs out from under him. Kyuubi simply raised the leg Naruto was aiming at and stomped down on the side of the boy's knee. Naruto rolled backwards, holding his knee and screaming in pain. When the pain had subsided, he stood again. Kyuubi rushed at him, throwing his leg out in a snap kick that Naruto barely dodged. Kyuubi swung his other leg, catching Naruto in the stomach. As his foot landed back on the ground, he launched a vicious knee rise that caught Naruto in the chin and sent him flying backwards through the air. Kyuubi slowly lowered his leg and stood easily. Naruto was on his hands and knees, coughing up blood from where he had bitten his tongue. He slowly stood, swaying slightly. Kyuubi ran towards Naruto and slammed his knee into the side of Naruto's face, knocking him back onto the ground. Naruto shakily stood, coughing up blood. He dashed towards Kyuubi, throwing a flurry of punches, these much faster than the last. He threw a roundhouse kick at Kyuubi's head, but Kyuubi ducked and smashed him in the chin with a palm strike, sending him flying backwards. Naruto rolled and came to a stop about 4 feet away. Naruto stood up and faced Kyuubi, blood dripping from his face and body, but he still wasn't ready to give up. He raced towards Kyuubi, far faster than before, almost his normal speed. He slammed blow after blow of palms and punches, hitting Kyuubi with everything he had. He finished with a sweeping kick, knocking Kyuubi off the ground. He smashed a punch into Kyuubi's gut, making him cough blood. He threw another punch and caught Kyuubi in the face, sending him spiraling into the air. He jumped into the air above Kyuubi and hit him in the chest with a barrage of stomping kicks. He finished with an axe kick to Kyuubi's head, sending him flying towards the ground. He appeared below Kyuubi, smashing him in his spine with a fist. There was a crack and Kyuubi slumped off his fist. Suddenly red chakra enveloped him and he stood again, looking as if he had never taken any damage. Kyuubi smirked. Well, it seems like you've gotten used to the extra weight. When you wake up you will still be affected by the weight, but you'll know how much extra output you need to move normally. Naruto nodded, amazed at how strong Kyuubi had been. Kyuubi snapped and a chalkboard appeared behind him, with a diagram of the human body, complete with chakra pathways, even some that Naruto had never seen before. Now, you know of the nature of chakra, right? Yeah, it's the manipulation of physical and mental energies. Right, most jutsu require a mixture of the two, plus hand seals to channel the chakra, and a name to unleash the chakra. But if you become good enough at a particular jutsu, all you will need chakra and hand seals to focus it. It presents a massive advantage in battle because unless your opponent recognizes the hand seals you're using, they'll be caught off guard once you use the jutsu, thinking that you would have to say the name, giving them time to prepare. Naruto frowned. But if the jutsu needs a voice to unleash, how does practicing help you not have to say the name of the jutsu? Look at it this way, what is noise? Vibrations in the air that are translated when they reach your ears. He answered, I don't know if that's right, tell me and I'll correct it if it isn't. And if voice is just a vibration, then if you match that vibration, what would happen? Naruto frowned, thinking. Watch. Kyuubi made a few hand seals and snapped with two. The field around him burst into flames. The flames quickly died down, leaving Naruto staring in awe as he figured it out. The vibration activate the jutsu, he whispered. Kyuubi smiled. I knew you'd figure it out. He pointed to the chakra network of the person on the board and traced a path through the chakra coils. When a person channels chakra, it travels through these coils to get to the point in the body that the person is focusing it to. Depending on the jutsu, this could be the hands, chest, throat, or feet. Some jutsu affect the environment around the person and the chakra is expelled out of the body. Here he paused for a moment then continued. However, humans' chakra systems are flawed. There are holes in the chakra coils, which causes much of the chakra to be lost as it travels to the point where it's needed. With the Ryutsu chakra and demonic chakra that runs through your chakra coils, you have larger tears in your chakra coils than most people. With your amount of chakra, however, it doesn't really bother you. But if someone else had the amount of tears in their coils that you do and tried to use a jutsu, they would immediately suffer from chakra exhaustion. Kyuubi frowned. When you channel chakra for a jutsu, it tears your inner coils, making you lose a lot of chakra. You end up rupturing most of your chakra coils. If I wasn't healing them as soon as you used your jutsus, you'd probably be dead from the amount of damage to them. However, even with me healing them, most of the chakra you channel escapes through the holes, making it appear as a helix around your body. It won't happen here because this is your mind, but out there. He trailed off, thinking. I could send a pulse of demonic chakra through your system. What that would do is it would basically rebuild your chakra systems. It would tear your chakra coils, destroying, but with my healing, when they reform, they would be intertwined with demonic chakra, strengthening them. The thing is that it would cause you incredible pain. You wouldn't die, but you'll wish you would just to stop the pain. I'll do it now so you won't be awake for it. I can make sure you stay asleep, but you'll be feeling really bad when you wake up in the morning. On top of the pain, think a hangover times 20. Naruto nodded. Do it. Red chakra pulsed around Kyuubi and then disappeared. He nodded. It's done. To Zuna's house. Everyone woke up to a loud yell of pain. They all rushed to Naruto's room and burst open the door. They gasped as they saw what was going on. Naruto was covered in red chakra. The chakra pulsed and enveloped Naruto completely. Naruto opened his mouth to show rapidly growing canines. Ah! He screamed again as the chakra pulsed. The bed caught fire and he fell to the floor. The flames licked hungrily at him but couldn't get through the barrier of red chakra. There was movement along Naruto's muscles as the chakra built up his muscles, then a sickening crunch as they broke, which were immediately healed. The red chakra thinned and appeared as a transparent red barrier between Naruto and the looked on in horror as his body rebuilt itself from the inside out. The mindscape. Naruto grimaced as he felt a twinge of pain but shook it off. Kyuubi noticed this and his eyes narrowed worriedly. The chakras affecting him even in his mind. This might not turn out as well as I had hoped. Kyuubi shook his head to get rid of the thoughts and turned to Naruto. All right. I'm going to teach you a jutsu that will help you greatly. It's one I created a long time ago. It's called Iron Hada 1. Iron Skin. It's a defensive jutsu that blocks most attacks but consumes a massive amount of chakra, so use it carefully. Here are the seals. He flashed through a few seals, making Naruto copy them until he was sure that they were the right speed to actually be used in combat. As Naruto finished a set of hand seals, Kyuubi slipped into a fighting stance. I'm going to attack you until you do the jutsu in combat. You can't block any of my attacks unless you use that jutsu. I'll give you a hint. Remember what I said about focusing chakra to different body parts. Naruto tilted his head, trying to think. He suddenly felt himself flying backwards from a fist planted in his gut. Kuso. Guess I took too long thinking. Naruto fell to the ground, skidding to a stop in front of the stood, brushing stone fragments only to duck quickly to dodge Kyuubi's incoming kick. Shit, he's much faster than before. Just how much was he holding back? He was suddenly interrupted as a knee smashed into his solar plexus, sending him flying into the mountainside behind him. He's not giving me time to think, but then again that's the point, isn't it? To be able to use it in a battle situation. He quickly jumped up, dodging a flurry of Kyuubi punches. He ducked Kyuubi's next kick and slipped behind him before jumping up into a tree. I've got to think. Channeling chakra to the body, expelling chakra, that's it. He channeled chakra all throughout his body and flashed through the hand seals and dropped down in front of Kyuubi. As Kyuubi's fist flew towards him, he finished the jutsu, calling out, Iron Hada. There was a snap, and then a yell of pain. Kyuubi cursed, grabbing his hand in pain. Damn it, he figured it out. Red chakra enveloped his wrist and then it was fine. The bone receding back into the flesh. Kyuubi stood and smiled. Well done, Kit. You figured it out. Naruto smiled and suddenly Kyuubi stood straight. It's done, you're waking up. Naruto nodded and quickly dispelled his clones as he felt himself slipping away from his subconscious into the world of the waking. Tazuna's house. The first thing Naruto felt when he woke up was pain, lots of pain. He groaned and tried to sit up, only to be pushed back down. He struggled to open his eyes, but when he did, blinding sunlight filtering through and he closed them quickly. He laid his head on the pillow that had been placed under his head and managed to croak out. Close the blinds, please. The person obliged and he opened his eyes again. Hinata. Hinata looked down at him, concern evident in her eyes. Naruto-kun, you have to rest, you went through a lot last night, she said. He nodded, remembering what had happened the night before. After a bit he pushed himself upright, pushing away Hinata's hand when she tried to help him. He shakily stood, his whole body racked with pain. He walked to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes widened as he examined the second set of changes. Your chakra did this. He felt Kyuubi nod and looked closely. His silver-streaked blonde hair was now almost completely silver. His fangs had grown much longer and he noticed that he was far more muscular than he had been. His red shirt had torn and again he repeated the seals Kyuubi had used. There was a cloud of smoke in front of him and a black shirt appeared in front of, slipped it on and walked out of the bathroom. He was startled by the loud hello of everyone at the table but quickly shook it off. He took a seat at the table and began to eat breakfast. After a few minutes Kakashi leaned forward. Naruto, what happened last night? Naruto raised an eyebrow, asking the man to explain. Last night red chakra covered your body. It increased your muscles, body mass. We heard you bones strengthen after they broke multiple times last. Hinata looked at your chakra with Hibayakugan. She saw that it was emanating from your stomach. What was going on? Naruto pretended to act stupid. I don't know, Kakashi-sensei. All I know is that I went to bed last night, and then woke up this morning and my hair and body were like this. Kakashi knew that he was lying and pulled Naruto off to the side. Naruto, if something has happened I'm ordering to tell me. Naruto scowled and stared Kakashi in the eye. You have no right to tell me what to do. Not after that rakery of yours. Kakashi's eye widened and he walked away. Naruto opened the door to the house and walked outside to train.